Well, good afternoon. It's another beautiful day. I'm down here in southern Alberta. It's like 14 degrees. Hard to believe this wonderful weather that we're having. But if you go onto the news, it's hard to believe what some of our citizens are going through and the torture that our governments are putting them through. And just want to go back in history here and reminisce for a few minutes. And when I turned 14 years of age, it was very exciting. I got my learner's license, and my grandfather, who was heavily involved in politics, said, "You need to drive me up to Red Deer for the AGM of the Social Credit Party." My grandfather was the provincial treasurer for Ernest C. Manning for a few years, and so I grew up talking and I guess living and breathing politics most of my life, and my grandfather mentored me a lot, gave me a lot of books to read, talked about the importance of being fiscally responsible as a government and using tax dollars wisely. And but probably most important, what he talked to me about was the importance of protecting fundamental freedoms, and how um, fragile they are and how easily we can lose those. And it's been something that I've spent a lot of my life focusing on, learning, studying, and understanding. But I want to go back a few years to 2002 and again talk about the problems of government. And I guess I need to also say, though, there's three things that my grandfather always told me I needed to do. One, you need to be involved in taking time, the proper time, to raise your family, and not just be a workaholic and be gone and absent and leaving someone else or your wife to do it, or the school teacher, someone else. Number two, to be involved with your community, whether that's on a church basis, on volunteerism, doing things, but you need to be part of your community. And number three, he said, most important, you need to be part of government. That government is kind of like cancer, and if you're not watching it and controlling it, it has an unbelievable growth factor that will grow exponentially, and it's just a real problem. And so I want to go back right now and to reminisce in 2002 that we had 13 Alberta farmers who, after 6 years of fighting with the Canadian Wheat Board and wanting their right to sell their grain, were jailed. And I was at the rally in Lethbridge, Alberta, that October. But I want to read a few of the comments from that press release that came out back in October. So I apologize. But David, are you going to put that up on the screen and people can see whether or not I can read that fine print? But here, 13 Alberta farmers jailed for violating custom rules by hauling grain to the US. Lethbridge, Alberta, 31st of October, 2002. 13 farmers, and oh, if I can get that to scroll a little bit, who broke customs rules by taking their grain over the border, were taken to jail Thursday as their wives and their children broke down in tears, and hundreds more, including Premier Ralph Klein, rallied in protest. I was there at that rally. I saw those young kids that were crying, their wives, and it was terrible. Um, they face paying fines ranging between $1,000 and $7,500 or staying in jail for terms ranging from just under a month to half a year. In 1996, they were charged under the Canadian Custom Act for illegally transporting grain across the US border because they didn't have proper export documents. And I'll stop there for a minute. The fact is that with the Canadian Wheat Board, Western farmers are not allowed to sell their grain across the line, but we had to sell it to the Canadian Wheat Board. And then if we wanted to sell it across the line, we had to buy it back from the Canadian Wheat Board, which was still in our barns or in our granaries, still there, and then get a permit from them and then try and sell it to the US. And of course, they charge an exorbitant price compared to what they were going to pay us. For example, they might say, we'll pay you $3.50 right now for your wheat, but if you want to buy it back, we're asking for $6 or another ridiculous price. So to carry on, at that time, Canadian farmers were fetching $8.50 Canadian a bushel for durum wheat south of the border instead of the $3.50 from the wheat board. Today, Alberta, and then this is Premier Klein that was actually speaking at the rally, and so I'm reading his quotes. Today, Alberta farmers will face punishment for doing what farmers are supposed to do, and that's raise, harvest, and sell their crops, Klein said to a crowd that's cheering. Whoa. When decent, hardworking farmers are willing to take extreme measures of going to jail for the sake of fundamental freedoms that other businesses take for granted, there is something wrong with the laws of this land. You know, as the signs say here, farmers in other parts of Canada are free to make their own decisions about how they do all these things. But for some reason, Western producers are treated differently. They have no choice about how or to whom they market some of their crops, particularly wheat and barley. This is unfortunate and sorry, here, gotta scroll this. It's unfortunate and it's also unnecessary. It's a system that has to change. And folks, change is what this rally is all about. I could go through a litany of issues that have led to this misunderstanding of the West. Well, we have the Kyoto Protocol, we had the National Energy Program, we had the gun registration, and we have the Canadian Wheat Board. You know, this government doesn't understand that Western producers deserve to be treated differently. So thank you, David. Um, Once again, we're struggling in the West, and we have a premier who is not willing to stand up for Albertans, and it's wrong. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard about the detainees that are being taken at the Calgary airport and being rushed off to quarantine sites because from all that we're hearing right now is that they had the wrong tests, that whatever test they had before they got on the flight, rather than telling them that these tests aren't right, they're showing up and the border patrol or border security is basically arresting these people, saying if you don't follow and come with us, we're going to arrest you and taking you to a quarantine facility of unknown destination. David, can we maybe just play the video of this mother that her son was just detained on Saturday?
So I'm at the Calgary airport, and we fought to get our son home from Arizona as quick as we could because we knew these regulations were supposed to be going in on Monday, the February the 1st. It's Saturday night at midnight, and my son is supposed to be coming in from the flight from Phoenix, and he is being detained because they didn't accept his test. They're saying it's not accurate, and they are wanting to take him to a quarantine facility. They won't let me talk to him. They won't let me see him. They won't come and talk to me. The Border Patrol services say that they have nothing to do with it. They won't tell me who has to do with it. They won't tell me who's picking him up. They won't tell me where he's going. They won't tell me anything. And they say he doesn't have a choice. They say that it's the law. They say that I don't have the right to talk to him, to see him. And they are taking him against my will and his will. And I'm not okay with it. And I don't know what to do about it. And I don't know where I'm supposed to find him. So this quarantine facility apparently is up and running and totally legal, as they say. And I'm freaking out.
Thank you, David. Again, another tragic, sad story. The stress, the mental pressure, it's just unacceptable. But what's more unacceptable is our premier, who continues to tweet out and on Facebook saying, "Oh, I have nothing to do with this. This isn't me. Nope, this is the federal issue." Well, I distinctly remember our premier saying that he was going to stand up for Albertans against Ottawa. He's failing once again to say that he has nothing to do with this. He needs to speak out. He needs to stand up for Albertans and our rights. This is unbelievable that they're imposing these new edicts and saying that, you know, that these individuals are the scorn of society, that they're bringing back disease, that they're bringing a deadly virus back. It's interesting. I was going to put up another one that I saw on BitChute today, but Biden's COVID press secretary, or that area that they do, actually they're caught off mic, basically saying that, yeah, you know, the guy comes in after it's over, I take it. and just says, you guys can take off your masks. This isn't a big deal. It's only a 0.1 in 1,000 that anybody gets this. And long story short, they're acknowledging that this is just like any other flu season. But yet, look at the damage that has been done in Alberta, in Canada, the US, worldwide, by the scare tactics that these governments are using, and our political leaders failing to stand up to the health authorities who are imposing these rules and regulations, and helping them by having the authorities go and threaten arrest of these individuals that aren't abiding by their laws, and whether that's wearing a mask, whether that's playing hockey on an open rink, whether it's coming together for a birthday party. It's just appalling what's going on. But what's more appalling is that our premier seems to think that it's okay, or that, oh, it's not me, it's Ottawa, and not standing up and telling them to stand down, which to me is what he needs to do. He either needs to tell Ottawa to stand down, or he needs to stand down, and we get a premier who will stand up for Albertans. But I've talked a lot about the COVID, and there's a lot of reports out there, and again, the US is now acknowledging. There was a report that came out that said that many lives could have been saved had they used hydroxychloroquine and zinc, ivermectin, and there's more and more evidence coming out all the time. But it's too late for thousands and thousands of Albertans and Canadians and Americans, because of the way our government has been responding to this, and the College of Physicians attacking doctors who want to try these repurposed drugs that we've known, since June, the efficacy of them and their well-doing. But bottom line is that we have a premier who's failing to stand up. And the sadder part is that I talked last week, is that they're actually putting fuel on the fire. They're scaring people. They're scaring our children, our grandchildren. They're scaring our neighbors, and telling, they have the snitch line that, oh, you need to call in and report people that aren't following the rules. And I'm sorry, but for me, the more I look at this is equivalent to someone who goes into a movie theater or to a big concert, something that's going on, and pulling the fire alarm, causing chaos, causing panic, causing fear. And this is what they continue to do with COVID, day in and day out, when the evidence just isn't there. We see the people that are getting fines, they're delaying the courts. And again, to go back to the farmers being jailed, 6 years, 6 years before they were charged, till they had to turn themselves in and go to jail, or they were going to have a warrant out for their arrest the next day. The Justice Center has filed many applications, but we can't get before a judge. Had these individuals resisted arrest, you have to wonder whether Section 7 of our Constitution, the habeas corpus, would be allowed, and that they'd get a hearing. They're not being told what's happening. But even the bigger part for me is the fact that if we were to go to the courts, and again, it's interesting, I hear in Italy that they're striking down some of these rules because the fact is they don't have the scientific evidence to justify what they're doing, which our Constitution says it has to do. If you're going to lose our fundamental freedoms, it needs to be demonstrably justified, and they can't. And every time those questions are asked, they refuse to come up with any evidence. And why? Because they don't have any. And these scare tactics are being used. They're ever increasing. And again, because it's not working, they're raising up the fines. And these people are going to get fined, cost $2,000 to go into these quarantine facilities. They're hiring security people to watch them and monitor them, and it goes on, and we just can't do it. And so what can we as Albertans do? Well, I still encourage you to go to my website, paulhinman.com. I have 2 different letters right at the top that you can sign. One is to end the lockdowns, and the other one is to allow us to sign a recall petition to fire our MLAs that aren't standing up and protecting our fundamental freedoms. But I just can't emphasize enough how important it is that we as Albertans send in letters, make phone calls, and protect people's freedoms. That it's only us as individuals, rather than being snitches on our neighbors, we need to stand up for them. And Jason Kenney has sold us out. He's selling us a bill of goods. And again, I'll say this again, what's most upsetting to me is that he keeps talking about the integrity of our healthcare system. We need to protect the integrity of our healthcare system. Well, Premier Kenney, you're losing the integrity of our system, and it's not a pretty sight. You're spending billions and billions of dollars, and you could have actually prepared for a second wave, and we could have field hospitals, we could train more people. There's a lot of things that you should and could have done. Again, when we go back to the pandemic planning, there was a plan back in 2014. You need to follow those things and not turn them over to the health officials to run our lives. But anyways, today's just going to be a short one. I just had to come out and speak against these isolation quarantine facilities that the federal government have set up here in Alberta, here in Calgary, and Albertans are being detained. I know many people that are canceling because they're concerned whether or not what they're needing to do is so-called unnecessary travel. My wife was actually scheduled to fly up to Anchorage. Her daughter is having an operation. She was going to go there and look after the grandkids for 2 weeks, and she canceled this morning because we don't know and we can't predict what our government is going to do, or whether she'd even be able to come back, or whether she could get there. And it's having an impact. It's having an impact on me, my family, on you, your friends, your neighbors, and we need to say no, and we need to stand up. But I hope that you'll go to my website, paulhinman.com, sign the petitions, and please go to our website, wildrose.party, wildrose.party. Read over our information that we have there and sign up, become a member, make a donation. We need to send Premier Kenney a message, and we need to grow an organization, a political party that actually protects the freedoms and the prosperity of Albertans for now and for the future. But I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll probably be doing another broadcast shortly, because what I've wanted to do since last Thursday was to talk about the Keystone XL and what Premier Kenney should be doing to defend our oil industry. But right now, the COVID continues to take precedent, and we will talk tomorrow or else Wednesday about the importance of what we can do to save our oil and gas industry. But thanks, and we'll talk again soon. God bless you.